The 1920s were a crazy time filled with innovation, dance, fashion, and joy. There's also quite a bit of hatred and controversy to go around. It was not so much unlike today. Because of that, we're going to take a look week by week at what was happening 100 years ago and compare it to today, here on the 20s in the 20s. This week, we're starting off Sunday with the Republic of Germany suggesting a compromise with the Allied powers over demands that the German government surrender 334 citizens for prosecution for crimes committed by them during the First World War. Under the German proposal, the Leipzig war crimes trials would take place before a group of 7 criminal judges from the former Imperial Court of Justice of Germany. The Allies, who had been unable to persuade Germany to allow its people to be tried by foreign governments, agreed to the German proposal in May and delivered the names of 45 accused German war criminals. On Monday, Germany's Reich Minister of Finance Matthias Erzberger was wounded in an assassination attempt as he was standing outside the criminal courts building in Berlin. Erzberger was struck in the shoulder, but a second bullet aimed at his stomach was deflected by the chain of his pocket watch. Lucky guy. On Tuesday, the Kingdom of Yugoslavia had gotten around to accepting the Allied proposal to create the Free State of Fiume for the region around the city of the same name, occupied by both Italian and Croatian persons who had been citizens of Austria-Hungary. Fiume would exist as an autonomous state until 1924. On Wednesday, the construction began on the Cincinnati subway in Cincinnati, Ohio, as Mayor John Galvin operated a steam shovel to dig the first ground at Walnut Street and the former Miami and Erie Canal. 2 miles of tunnels had been excavated by 1923, but most Cincinnati citizens are aware the project had been abandoned when no additional funding was ever provided. On that very same day, King Alfonso XIII of Spain issued a decree establishing the Spanish Legion, similar to the French Foreign Legion, under the name El Tercio de Extranjeros, the Foreigners Regiment. The Legion now consists of 5,000 troops, mostly used in NATO peacekeeping missions. In recent decades, the Legion had been involved in fighting in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Lebanon. Also on Wednesday, South Carolina's legislature passed a resolution specifically rejecting the proposed 19th Amendment. This was not simply failing to approve the resolution for ratification, but completely rejecting women's right to vote. The state Senate voted 30-4 to turn it down, and the state House of Reps had voted 97-21 in favor of rejection. On July 1st in 1969, almost 49 years later, South Carolina would ratify the amendment, kind of like Mississippi. It's a bit of a trend in that part of the country. On Thursday, Peru's National Assembly voted to ask the League of Nations to arbitrate a border dispute over the Tacna and Arica regions claimed by Peru, Chile, and Bolivia. And on Friday, the U.S. Bureau of Internal Revenue, EU, issued regulations governing the medicinal use of alcohol, the lone exception to prohibition. Under the rule, prescriptions by physicians were limited to no more than 1 pint of liter or wine at a time, and no refills earlier than 10 days. Hey, what do you know? Another parallel with a recurring topic of the 2020s. You may be wondering, what would alcohol be prescribed for? Oh, you know, the usual. Asthma, depression, diabetes, indigestion. Good boy, Timmy. I know that formula made your tummy sick. Here's some brandy to help you out. Anyways, also on Friday, a professional wrestling match between Joe Stetcher and Earl Caddock at New York's Madison Square Garden was filmed by Pioneer Film Corporation for later viewing by cinema audiences. The movie of the bout, which Stetcher won, is the oldest surviving film of a pro wrestling match. This is 2 people wrestling, if you couldn't tell. Madison Square Garden is still very well known and very common venue for fights and other sporting events. In the Principality of Albania, the delegates to the Congress of Lishanj voted to fire the existing government. Turhan Permete the Ottoman Empire Pasha, who had governed Albania after the breakup of the empire in 1918, was removed from office along with his cabinet. The Paris Peace Conference representative Sulejman Delvina was installed in his place. This was all amidst Albania's fight to remain a nation rather than being split up among surrounding nations or held under the thumb of the Ottoman Empire. On Saturday, the British Army and the Royal Irish Constabulary arrested 7 members of the Dublin City Council who had been elected to office as candidates of the Sinn Féin political party, which advocated Ireland's independence from the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. The party still exists today. The move came a day after the Irish Republic flags had been placed on the municipal building while the council was still in session. In all, 25 Sinn Féin members were arrested on warrants in the counties of Dublin, Clare, Limerick, and Tipperary, and were charged with violating the Defence of the Realm Act 1914. And that'll do it for this week's review of the 1920s here in the 2020s. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new today. As always, I appreciate your checking in and would appreciate any feedback, resources, or suggestions you might have. Go ahead and throw those in the comments below or shoot them over to me on Twitter.